So what's really cool about crypto and DeFi is there's different strategies to maximize your earnings. So some people choose a really simple, a simple strategy and they get 1 plus 1 equals 2. Others will provide a little bit of leverage or do some more advanced strategies where like 1 plus 1 in the same time frame can equal 5 for them, meaning you can just get 5 times the result, especially if you're bullish with this strategy. So Colin's going to kind of pop in today. Colin, thank you, by the way, for joining us. He's going
Absolutely.
to talk about a really good article he wrote in the UIG, and we thought it was only fair to bring it to YouTube here and talk about it a bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and first off, Lucas, thanks for allowing me to speak to this because it is something that I have been craving for a long time, and I hadn't put all the pieces together until fairly recently. And so I'm just so excited to share it in a Miro board that's sort of mapped out. And I think that for me as a visual guy who's a visual learner, for me to be able to see it all in continuation here, it should click. So hopefully it does for you as well. But big thing to note that this is a bit more of an advanced strategy, right? And so if you haven't mastered the basics of liquidity providing and doing this first step, and maybe I can zoom in just a hair if I could, if you haven't mastered this classic just DeFi positions where you're taking your capital and you're putting into liquidity pools, don't worry about the whole setup. But if you have operating a DeFi portfolio and you're like, man, I just want to squeeze more juice out of this thing. Well, I have this
Let's go.
setup for you. So yeah, let's dive in, Lucas. So where do I start here? So the idea here is that I am bullish in the short and long terms. Now, this is for me a zoomed out view of how a business operation could be set up in DeFi. On the left hand side, we have a series of DeFi positions. And when I say DeFi positions, I'm mostly talking about liquidity pool offerings, wrapped ETH USDC, Sol USDC, Bitcoin wrapped ETH, whatever it is that you want to provide as liquidity. That's what these gold positions are on the left. And the idea here is that and you know, actually, Lucas, I should say this. This is not written law. This can be moved and switched. There are so many different variations of this, but they're just the way I thought about it. Is that I would take the rewards from these DeFi positions here on the left, convert them into assets that I am very bullish on the long term. And so for me, I just gave a few examples of Wrap Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, and Atom, right? Because I want exposure to 3 different ecosystems, an EVM chain, something like Base or Arbitrum, Solana, and then the Cosmos ecosystem. So you can pick whatever you want, but those are the 4 that I started to lead with here. And so the idea here is that I have these DeFi positions, these liquidity pools that are producing me cash flow assets, maybe Sol USDC, but I'm converting all of these rewards into these assets here, and I'm lending them on a lending platform. So I'll give you an example. I'm in a Sol USDC position. It's printing Sol and USDC. I'm converting that USDC into Sol. I'm providing and I'm supplying all of that Sol here into something like Camino or something like that. I'm lending that Sol. The idea here is that now I have single asset exposure of these lent assets that I can now borrow other assets against. I can use it as collateral. And so this is where I love this, because in the past, I have always just taken my rewards and just moved it into a cold storage wallet. Now that's great. And I will say this, for some people in the UIG on the comments of this post, some people said, I just want to hold my stuff in a self-custody cold storage wallet, and I don't want to add this complexity. I'm like, this is great. Personal awareness is very important here. For me, I'm trying to squeeze the most out of the rewards that I'm earning while continuing to add exposure to these assets, these big ones, ETH, Bitcoin, Sol, Atom, right? And so what I'm doing here is I'm lending these assets, I'm borrowing stables against it. Now, Lucas, what does that mean? That means I'm using these assets as collateral. I'm borrowing a stable coin, DAI, USDC, USDT, whatever gives me the best rate, actually, right? Right? But what I'm doing in that sense is I'm longing the position. Okay, so when we're borrowing assets against other assets, we're either long or we're short the lent asset.
Let
And
us
in
know in the
this
comments.
case,
We could do
yeah.
a whole video on this, how to long, how to short, and how to do it providing liquidity. We'd be happy to do a video on it. Just let us know in the comments. For now, we'll stick to the long strategy.
Definitely. Yep. This is, and then again, reminder, this is a bullish strategy. So if you're short-term bearish on the market, not the best strategy for you. Short-term and long-term bullish, this is nice, right? So what we're doing, again, we're borrowing stables against that ETH. I'll just use ETH as the example. I'm borrowing stables against the ETH, and I'm taking those stables and then moving them into other DeFi positions, other liquidity pools. Again, I want to go back to this because it's important. If I am borrowing stables against a moving asset, I am longing this asset, meaning I want these assets to move up in price. Reason being is that if these assets move up in price, the loan to value ratio goes down. And so if you have like no idea what I'm talking about, loan to value ratio is how much of the loan in US dollars compared to the value of my lent positions. That ratio I want to keep as low as possible, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I want to keep it, this is just my personal preference, but I want to keep it under 50%.
Yeah, it's safe.
Meaning, yeah, it's very, very conservative. But and you got to always, there's so much to talk about. Always go to the platform you're borrowing and lending from and look at what their liquidation levels are.
Yes.
That's very important because this is the risk. If these assets go down in value, my loan to value ratio will be going up in percentage. So if I'm lending ETH and I'm borrowing stables, I lend $1,000 worth of ETH, I borrow $500 worth of stables. That's a 50% LTV. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
If ETH goes down in value and now this is not worth $1,000 anymore, it's worth $800. Well, now my loan to value ratio has gone up. And if it reaches that point of risk, like that liquidation level, I could lose all of the ETH that I have provided as liquidity because they have to, that's the way these platforms are set up when we're taking collateral. And so what I need to do is I need to make sure I'm doing two things. I need to make sure I'm looking very carefully at the LTV levels and I'm paying attention to the market because I need to make sure that I am collecting rewards and making sure that I am continuously adding to the supply. Does that make sense, Lucas? Because
yeah, and it's a good strategy too.
Down
because you're adding more Bitcoin to your bag anyway.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. That's my next point. So why I love this is that if these asset prices go down, what am I doing with these rewards? Well, I'm buying back that asset at a lower price and then adding that to my supply. And so yes, there is a risk, right? The risk is ETH drops so fast that I don't have time to add more ETH to it. That is the risk. So I am risking liquidation. But if I am, this is where I was talking about the activity levels in a previous video, is that if I'm paying attention to the market and I see ETH dropping, now I'm just taking the rewards that I'm earning from my DeFi portfolio, adding more ETH, which is my goal in the first place, which will drive that LTV down and keeping it healthy. So again, for me, I'm conservative. I want to keep it lower than 50%. And so to sum all this up, Lucas, I am able to have a DeFi portfolio that produces assets that I want to hold long-term, lend them on a lending platform, borrow against them in stables, taking a long position, taking those stables, putting them to work, generating a return. That return, the priority is to make sure the LTV stays low. So that means just buying ETH at lower prices. If ETH drops, I'm buying it. I'm doing that anyway. I want to buy more ETH, add it to my supply, drive the LTV down. And now I have this nice little flywheel effect that's producing me cash flow. Now that's all the risk, Lucas. What's amazing is now what if it's a bullish? Now ETH is going up in value. That's what I want to happen in the first place. So if all of these assets are, and we're in a bull run and things are moving up in value, my DeFi positions are moving up in value. My lent assets are moving up in value. Remember, single exposure. I love that. Those are moving up in value. My LTV is dropping because I borrowed stables, which is fixed, and this is moving. So my LTV is dropping. My DeFi positions over here are going up in value. And it's just a win-win-win-win-win all the way around. So the downside, again, one last
returns. That's like 1 + 1 no longer equals 2. It equals 3, 4, 5.
Exactly. It's a way to sort of, in a way, leverage your assets that you're using, that you have to produce more cash flow. Again, I want to say this one last time, Lucas. The risk is that if these assets go down in value, the LTV will rise and you are at risk of liquidation. So there is things that you need to be aware of, but I'll just scroll through very quickly. I mean, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of look at all this. I mean, it's incredible the amount of consumption, but then the maturity level of saying, this is great. This is what I've been looking for. Or this is a little bit complex, a little bit, maybe it's taking a little bit too much of my time, or I haven't quite mastered this yet. I'm going to focus on that and I'll revisit this in the future. So anyways, hopefully that made some sense.
Basically, what Colin is saying is come join the UIG. And I always sometimes feel conflicted when I say that, but I'm in so many communities. I spent probably by now 180 grand this year alone joining communities. Doing something alone, it can be done, but it's going to be the hardest way to do it. But when you're in a community where this is constantly top of mind, strategies like this are coming out, conversations are being had, you actually have people to bounce ideas off of. I think it is the fastest way to generate success in your chosen field. And we tried to make the UIG in a way where anyone can afford it. It's at a price point that is not like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It's under a It's a 2-figure investment every month. It's literally like if you buy coffee, you can make the UIG happen. It's $97 a month. That pricing, depending on when this video has come out, we are modifying some pricing stuff, but that's besides the point. Check it out. If anything, at least subscribe to this YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast so you can just stay tuned in. Like if the UIG, if you're just like, no, it's all a scam and I don't want to pay anyone $1, fine. But at least subscribe to the channel. Like engage with the content, join the podcast, engage with the podcast, be engaged in this stuff every single day, which we do a video every single day and a podcast episode every single day. We're committed to this stuff and I truly believe in it. Like it's your environment is going to dictate your success. And that environment doesn't have to be physical. It could be the digital stuff that you consume. TikTok, half naked chicks dancing around, you can consume that and your life is going to go nowhere. Or you can consume CryptoLabs content, which I highly recommend. It might not be as sexy, but it's definitely going to be better for your results.
I don't know about that. It's pretty sexy.
Well, Colin's on today, so Colin could do.
Lucas, can I say one last thing?
Yes.
Can I say one last thing? I had a mentor back in the day. This must be 2020, right? And I was sitting in one of his presentations, and he started talking about things, and then he paused and he looked at everybody who was there in the Zoom room, and he goes, half of this stuff will go over your head. Like half of this stuff will not land for you the first time, but that's good because you're learning. And that sentence just stuck with me because I'm like, okay, because I would always beat myself up when I'm in a room and I'm like, man, what are they saying? I don't quite get this. That's a good thing. And so I always remember that. So if I'm talking about this and shorting, longing, lending, and you're like, what are you talking about? Go watch it again. Go take $5 and practice this, like actually map this out and do it. And that will ingrain this stuff in you. So hopefully that makes sense. You're learning.
If we get 250 likes on this video, Colin is going to start OnlyFans. So like the video.
Oh boy.
Subscribe to the channel. And with that said, we will leave some videos on the four corners of your screen. Study up. And with that said, we'll see you next time.